Welcome back, Honors Western Civ. We're going to pick up, but by the way, just go ahead and strap in because it's going to take a little while today, so I'm just going to kind of get you ready for it mentally. But we're going to go ahead and pick up where we left off about the High Middle Ages and kind of get right back into where we were when we talked about papal supremacy, right? So, as you can tell, the Catholic Church's power is really starting to grow heavily during the High Middle Ages. And the Catholic Church has now introduced the ideas of an interdiction about excommunicating an entire group of people. They've introduced the idea of the Inquisition, a way to put on trial those who were considered heretics. So a lot of different stuff is going down right now. A really important thing to understand, though, is that popes are starting to claim power over kings, and that they have the authority to depose kings if they so feel like. Gregory VII is considered one of the best pope examples of this. And what I want you to do for a little extra sliver of homework is in your notes right now, you should come in and on the warm-up, it's going to say, what did Gregory VII do? I want you to just kind of be ready to know who he is, okay? So I'm going to talk about him a little bit, but there's also some other goofy stuff we're going to talk about today too. So anyway, the Pope claimed his power though because the Church had supreme power because they can teach, preach, and translate biblical text, right? So, and now this is really important to rulers and kings because here's the thing, even rulers want to go to where? To heaven, right? So anyway, let's keep going though. So this right here is Europe in 1050 AD. And this is before the Battle of Hastings, which is very important. We'll talk about that today. It's one of my favorite battles to talk about. So anyway, this right now, if you were to look at this versus your geography quiz that we took recently, what's the difference in the map? A lot, right? There are no hard-drawn borders. This is all kingdoms, okay? So write that down real quick. There were no countries in Europe during this point. It were kingdoms, okay? They were just simple kingdoms. Now, so let's keep going, though. England. Somebody tell me how did England get the name England? Or how did English get the name English, right? Where does all that come from? Well, it comes from the Angles and the Saxons, okay? Because Angles, and they spoke Anglish, right? Language of the Angles, which then originated itself into English, just like it was originally called Angleland, which then became England, right? So anyway, the Angles and the Saxons had invaded England in the 400s, okay? Now, they divided everything into separate kingdoms. So they had the Angle kingdom and then the Saxon kingdom, right? They each had their own customs and laws. But they're going to actually eventually interbreed, and they're going to be called what? Anglo-Saxons, right? So remember, all these are just Roman barbarian tribes that are moving around. So right here, as you can see, there were the Jutes, the Angles, the Saxons, the Frisians, and the Franks, right? Well, the Angles and the Saxons took over this area right here, which used to be formerly home to the Roman Empire. Who built that wall right here? What emperor built a wall in Europe to try and limit the expansion of the Roman Empire? Good job, Coffee. Hadrian, right? So they took over that former space, though, and they actually established the lands of the Saxons and the Anglo-Saxons, and they mixed together and made Anglo. All right, anyway, so England, though, was subject to frequent invasions from Vikings. Alfred the Great, a Saxon king, was going to be the one that unites England after stopping many Viking advances. Now, he was able to stop some of these Viking advances because he was one of the ones that introduced what system of protection and order? God, y'all are so smart. I can barely even handle it. Good job, Andy Miles. It was a system called feudalism, right? So don't forget that. Now, anyway, so that right there is good old Alfred. That's Alfred the Great, right? He's very important. Don't forget him. People like to just shoo away Alfred the Great, but I mean, you got to think about it. He literally, how many of you have English descent in your history? Yeah, exactly. So think about that. This man literally, had he not set up these systems, might actually be the reason why England was never founded, or like why we're speaking English and not French. So anyway, let's keep going though. These two guys. Oh, you got to talk about the establishment of England. You got to talk about these guys, right? In 1066, Alfred's descendant, King Edward, died without a what? Without an heir to the throne. Happens to the best of us, right? So anyway, two people claim the throne. Now, can two people have the throne? No, this isn't Rome. We don't give any of that consul bull crap. We'd like to actually much more symbolize the idea of one supreme absolute monarch. Just like, what is the oldest absolute monarchy in the world? Catholic Church. Good job, Wisaki. I saw you over there. Now, anyway, so Harold Godwinson, son of one of Edward's closest advisors, said, I deserve it because it was promised to me. But then William of Normandy, who claims that Godwinson promised the throne to him, is from France? All right, anyway, so he led the Normans, right? This is William of Normandy right here, and that is Harold Godwinson. Now, judging already from the artwork, you can tell probably that William of Normandy is going to win this fight because this painting over here looks very crusty. Now, what was the only recorded piece of history from the early Middle Ages that was 70 meters long and it depicted all these different frames of like separate things? It's not even really a tapestry, but I just gave you the answer. The Bayeux Tapestry did all of the history of the Middle Ages leading up to this point in history. 1066 is one of the most important years you will ever need to know, is the Battle of Hastings. All right, so anyway, now, these two men fought at the Battle of Hastings, right? Conflict broke out over who should be king. So Harold Godwinson, William of Normandy, going toe-to-toe right now, okay? So William wins the battle and becomes king of England. I'm going to show you how he won the battle in a second. It's actually really, really cool. So Harold Godwinson is killed in the battle. How do you think he died? Oh, good job, Bears. He got shot through the eye with an arrow. Now, this was actually made possible because William of Normandy was one of the very first kings to separate his army into units by specialty. So he had archers, cavalry, and irregular light infantry. So anyway, now, this right here is the Battle of Hastings, okay? So this is Harold's command post in the back and his shield wall. Now, this is a very old Roman tactic of a shield wall, just a heavily armored infantry. But over here, you can see William's command post up on near Telham Hill. The Bretons, the Normans, and the French were like combined William's troops. Now up front, he has his archers. In the middle, he has his infantry, and in the back, he has his cavalry. Right. So the war breaks out, of course, the battle breaks out at 9 a.m. in the morning, like October 14th, 1066. Right. So the Bretons fall back, pursued by Saxons, and it begins to break apart. William Normandy begins to break apart Harold's shield wall, and eventually during this entire skirmish, William's cavalry kills Harold in a victorious assault with an arrow right through his eyeball. Now, the town is named for the battle site, and William's command post is going to occupy this site as well, and they're going to be successful victors at the Battle of Hastings. So William begins to centralize power and claims all land in England as a proprietary and gave land to his supporters. He again reestablished what system? Feudalism. Good job. So, anyway, now this is very, very important also. This is the book that he had written. Now, everybody's like, well, Augustus had a census. And you're right. Augustus did do the very first modern day version of a census in history. But William the Conqueror, as he's going to be called after he is victorious at the Battle of Hastings, he wrote this bad boy, the Domesday Book. Pronounced Doomsday, spelt Domesday. Don't try and catch me on that one. Don't you try to Lismack me, Dermer. All right? So it's pronounced Doomsday. So it is a survey of people living in England, what they owned, and how much they could pay in taxes. This created the first efficient income tax system. It's genius, right? Because you can't tax everybody the same flat rate, because if you do, the rich either really get off very easily, or you end up punishing people who may not be able to pay that flat tax rate. So you need an adjustable rate, okay? So the very first income tax system was actually devised by this Domesday Book. So, now this is much better though. Bang, bang. Yay, Magna Carta. Say it with me. Yay, Magna Carta. You should be saying yay, Magna Carta, because the Magna Carta is the very first document to ever establish basic human rights under any new government. King Richard the Lionhearted. Okay, we're going to talk about him later on when we get to Middle Ages conflict. But he started, oh, God, no, that is wrong. He did not start in the First Crusade. I'm sorry, I did not mean to put that. Third Crusade, he went to go fight against Saladin. All right, so now, anyway, but he's going to be kidnapped on his way back after he lost, and he's going to be held for ransom, and blah, 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 blah. We're going to talk about that later, though. Don't worry. So, King John, either his cousin or his brother, I think it's his cousin. Somebody told me it's his brother. I don't know if that's true or not. So I was talking to Mr. Buchanan about this earlier, but we'll look that up. Somebody double check that for me. For extra credit tomorrow, whoever tells me how King John is related to King Richard the Lionheart gets extra credit, okay? He's going to take over. Now, here's the thing. King John is the antagonist in what story? The story of Robin Hood, right? And it was a rightly earned antagonistic perspective. William's descendants had begun to abuse their power. King John especially. He lost most of England's land in a very, very pricey war with France. Now, he began to raise taxes on the nobles, right, to try and finance for this war. Because that's what the English do after they lose a war. They try to get people to pay for it out of their own pockets, just like America, like how we were established, right? So the nobles are very pissed off about this. So they raised an army using their what? Good job, vassals. And they had forced him to sign the Magna Carta at the tip of a sword in 1215. 1215. 1215, 1215, 1215, yay what, good job, yay Magna Carta. All right, so anyway, now let's talk about what the Magna Carta is, though, real quick. It's a document that limits the power of the king, right? The Magna Carta was the first attempt to try and avoid an absolute monarchy. Now, it means Great Charter, so it laid the groundwork for democracy in Europe, and it established the British Parliament. It established the first dual bicameral legislative body in England, okay? Now, anybody know what the two houses are called in the Parliament? It's called the House of Lords and the House of Commons, okay? So, just like here we have the House of Representatives and the Senate, and just like in Rome they had the tribunes and the Senate as well. Good job. So, anyway, now, the Magna Carta, basic principles of it. The king cannot raise taxes without approval of a council of nobles and clergy. Because if you had a king that just taxed everybody whatever the heck they wanted to, you would have a king a lot like Caligula, who is just going to use that money for whatever he feels like, right? So you have to have a check and a balance. This is also going to set up the very first systems of checks and balances in Europe outside of the very first basic Roman government, right? So later, this all became the British Parliament, the councils of nobles and the councils of the House of Lords and the House of Commons, right? So the House of Lords was the group of nobles, and the House of Commons was the clergy and the common people. Now, the king could not arrest people without cause either, or take property without just cause. Now, these are basic principles you've already heard in the U.S. what? Our Bill of Rights and our Constitution. So as you can see, the Magna Carta is a very, very important document that affects you on a daily basis. It affects you at home. This Magna Carta affects you every single day because it set up your basic rights, okay? So, it also established habeas corpus, which is the fact that you have to be convicted by jury to be sent to jail, or a fair and speedy trial by a jury of your peers. And then also that the king had to obey law, and that they were not above the law. Right now, if President Obama were to walk in here and punch Mr. Terry in the face, right, I can sue him for assault, because he is just as susceptible to the law as everything else. Yay what? Yeah, yay Magna Carta. So, now, the power of the popes, of course, is going to begin to grow, and we're going to talk more further about this when we get to the Reformation. But the popes were powerful spiritual leaders that developed political power during the Middle Ages. You know that, okay? Remember, I made this for public school kids a long time ago. Popes began to claim authority over rulers. This often led to conflicts between popes and kings, and especially when we get to the Reformation. We're going to talk about this with old fat boy Henry VIII and... Oh, no, I can't remember what pope that is. I'll have to go look that up. Don't quote me on that. Now, anyway, Gregory VII was the one that tried to really expand political power. This is the one that I told you to look up, okay? Now, just look up something quirky about him. But anyway, he said that the pope can be judged by He said the pope can be judged by no one, that the Roman Catholic Church has never erred and never will err till the end of time. It's a little cocky. So the pope alone can depose and restore bishops. He alone can call general councils and authorize canon law. He can depose an emperor if he feels like. He can absolve subjects from their allegiance. And also, he even said that all princes should kiss his feet when they come in there to pray to him. Now, he's considered a good pope when it comes to the authority of the Catholic Church. He's especially considered a good pope when it comes to the morality of kings. He actually excommunicated Henry IV like 3 times. And then Henry IV said, tried to have him deposed as well. It's this entire fumbly-bumbly story I'll tell you about tomorrow. But we'll get into all that stuff tomorrow, okay? So make sure you write this stuff down. Remember, our extra little bit of homework isn't even count anymore because I forgot that this was at the end of this presentation. But power of the popes begins to grow. Yay what? Magna Carta, Battle of Hastings, the establishment of kingdoms in Europe, and we also talked about papal supremacy. So these are 5 really big things that you need to know, okay? Well, we're going to get into further things when we come back in tomorrow. Look forward to seeing you all then. Have a great day.